Hi, and welcome to the program. My name is Kerry. On July 25th, President Trump called his colleague Volodymyr Zelensky and congratulated him on a parliamentary landslide. Zelensky's party, Servant of the People, is the first party in post-independence Ukraine to have an absolute majority. Here to discuss that today with me is U.S. Ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland. He's going to talk with me about how often he visits Kiev, what he likes to do here, and who he spoke with today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Kerry. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Tell me about how your day was.
Well, had a great lunch with my team, but before that I had a wonderful hour-long meeting with President Zelensky. That followed on the heels of his telephone call yesterday with President Trump.
Did he give you insight on what they spoke about?
Absolutely. I actually spoke with President Trump just a few minutes before he placed the call. And not only did the President call to congratulate President Zelensky, but also to begin the collaboration of charting the pathway forward with the U.S.'s support of Ukraine and a White House visit that's upcoming for President Zelensky.
That's great news because we're all curious about this. There hasn't been a date set for this, sometime in late summer? Tell us more about that, please.
Well, the date is only subject to scheduling. Both President Zelensky's calendar and President Trump's calendar with events going on around the globe, G7 coming up, the commemoration of World War II in Warsaw. There's a lot of travel coming up for both presidents, so we're trying to find a mutually convenient date in the coming weeks. We don't want this to take months for both of them to meet at the White House. President
Zelensky's office released a statement saying that President Trump was sure Ukraine was going to be seen in a more positive light, and he's been encouraging Ukraine to fight corruption, and he's sure Zelensky and his government will take that forward. What would you recommend that Zelensky's government could now do to show signs that they're taking this seriously? Well, we're very optimistic that President Zelensky and his team are taking it seriously. We've had conversations with Ukraine that far predated my tenure as U.S. ambassador, and it reminded us of Groundhog Day. We'd watch the movie over and over, and the same conversations would happen. They were happy conversations, but nothing changed. President Zelensky was very mindful of that. That's really one of the things he ran on. And we're very confident that he takes these changes seriously. He's going to implement them in record time, and the U.S. is going to be right there with him, supporting him. Okay, it's no secret that Ukraine is in a tug of war geopolitically. It's not a tug of war. In your opinion, what is it? They're Western, and they're going to stay Western. And as they're anchoring themselves in the West, they're still in a precarious situation. Energy security, lack of certain infrastructure, their wish to join NATO. These are all topics that are probably brought up. Sometimes it's hard to say no to a friend. Well, it's not a question of saying no, it's a question of saying when. There are certain things that they have to do. There are preconditions to anything. Whether it's joining NATO, whether it's providing other outlets for their energy needs. These are all things that have to happen in sequence. And I can tell you, President Zelensky was only inaugurated, 6-7 weeks ago, and he's already accomplished a great deal in record time, including building the beginnings of a world-class team that are going to work seamlessly with all of his friends, including the United States, and probably most importantly, the United States. What is the United States willing to do for Ukraine in the short term to support this transition? Oh, we're working at all levels. In fact, the President, in order to emphasize the importance of the relationship, given all of the other things that the White House is currently engaged in, has asked not only our primary interlocutor with Ukraine, Ambassador Taylor, who is here on the ground, our bilateral ambassador, Special Representative Volker, Ambassador Volker, whose primary portfolio is Ukraine. We have what are called the Three Amigos, and the Three Amigos are Secretary Perry, again, Ambassador Volker, and myself. And we've been tasked with sort of overseeing the Ukraine-U.S. relationship, between our contacts at the highest levels of the U.S. government and now the highest levels of the Ukrainian government. We can make sure that all of the reforms and all of the initiatives that we are undertaking with Ukraine stay on track and happen quickly. Now, if it's such a priority for the United States, just a month ago, President Zelensky spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin and suggested that there be a rethinking of the so-called Normandy format, that perhaps not only France and Germany and Russia and Ukraine should be involved, but the British Prime Minister and Donald Trump should come to Minsk and discuss the conflict on the border between Ukraine and Russia. Would there be an openness to that?
You know, those things are all going to be discussed at the White House. I'm not going to get ahead of what our strategy is going to be. What I can tell you is that when you mentioned the tug of war earlier, there is not going to be a tug of war. The West has prevailed. Ukraine is a Western country. It will have Western values. It will have the rule of law, the rule of democracy. It will not be run by a dictator.
Now, your position was empty for over a year before you became the U.S. ambassador to the EU. Tensions are a little bit, it's been described as the relationship has changed. If we talk about energy policy, the United States is looking for security and reliability in energy policy. The EU is looking more towards renewable energy and having their security that way. As a businessman, even if you don't believe in the science of climate change, it's more economical to be careful with resources. Which way would you suggest the Ukraine goes with their energy security?
Well, I believe in climate change. I don't know why you think I don't believe in climate change. It's a question of what is changing the climate and what's contributing to it and what is not. To get to your question, energy security is economic security and it's military security as well. The United States' first and foremost goal, given our huge commitment to NATO and our unshakable commitment to the defense of Europe, is to make sure that Europe is energy independent. At the end of the day, would we like to sell them some of our LNG, which we now have in abundance? Of course. But that is not the primary driver for our desire to have Europe seek energy independence. Our primary driver is we don't want Europe to suffer at the hands of Russia when they decide they don't like the way the European Parliament is voting or some politician is making a decision that the Russians don't agree with, and they turn the valve off in the middle of January. And they've done it before, they'll do it again.
Now, concerning your title, you're the U.S. ambassador to the EU, but you've been spending a great deal of time in Kiev. Why is that?
Well, President Trump has not only honored me with the job of being the U.S. ambassador to the EU, but he's also given me other special assignments, including Ukraine, as I mentioned previously. We want to make sure that all of the reforms are on track. The other thing is that the EU is highly interested, as we are, in Ukraine's future, because it really affects them directly. So we are working very closely. I look forward to working with the new leadership, with President von der Leyen, whom I'm seeing again on Monday, and that we're going to have a lot of US-EU initiatives concerning Ukraine, again, to make sure Ukraine is firmly rooted in Western culture and politics.
This isn't your first time in Kiev. We've talked about how many times.
Love this city.
Tell us a little bit about that. How often have you been here? And other than your official appointments, what you do when you're here?
Well, my grandparents were born here.
Oh, okay.
You know, they emigrated during the war. So I have deep roots to Kiev, even though I've only been here twice. I've been to Odessa as well, and I'm looking forward to coming back, as well as spending more time in the country.
Have you looked up any relatives?
I have not.
Okay, that might be something to do one of your next visits here. I really appreciate you taking the time to visit with us. That was U.S. Ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland, speaking with us today about how often he comes to Kiev and the EU, U.S., and Ukraine relations. Thanks for watching.